Hello, I'm here at the Natural Dog Conference, and one of our sponsors and supporters of the event is a wonderful company called Pet Remedy. Now, I used Pet Remedy products recently when I moved over to Cyprus and I took my little dog with me, my rescue soy dog from Thailand, and what you do is you put this into their crate when they're travelling, and it helps them to feel very calm and happy. And to be honest, when I got to the other end at the airport, she was very calm and happy. So I like to think this did really help. But Jill here from Pet Remedy is going to tell you all about that. They've actually had clinical studies done on Pet Remedy, and almost to prove, in a sense, that it works, haven't you?
Yes, absolutely. If I just tell you a little bit of how Pet Remedy came about, it was actually Martin, whose cat was kept peeing on the bed on a regular basis, and we tried everything, decided that we needed something that was very natural, just to see if we could stop this cycle. The cat had got into this cycle of about every 10 days peeing on the bed, but usually waiting until Martin was in bed and then peeing, which was not very nice. So anyway, so this is really how Pet Remedy came about. He had a chat with a psychiatrist friend of his, and also a vet, and he had a long chat with them, and came up with valerian. So what we actually did is we took a very low dose of valerian, because in a high dose it can sedate. So we took a very low dose of valerian, and then mixed it with a few herbs, really, because valerian on its own doesn't smell very nice. How it actually works is the actives in the valerian actually trick the brain into sending out its own calming messages. So when your animal, whilst it was travelling, would be a bit anxious, all those nerve cells would be fired up. Pets at Home are selling it. We are selling it in lots of independent, small pet shops. Lots and lots of vets are now using it. It's very widely available. Also online as well, or through us ourselves, Pet Remedy. Yeah. So what this actually does is tricks the brain into bringing those nerve cells down. And because it's a natural response, it happens really very quickly. We then realised, we obviously made up a little solution, tried it on our cat, and found that actually he stopped peeing on the bed.
Okay, so why was it that you didn't necessarily just get the standard plugins? Because this is a different type of plugin, isn't it, really, to the traditional ones?
It is. We had tried everything else that was on the market.
Okay.
We tried the traditional ones, but nothing actually seemed to stop him doing it. And you just don't know with cats what actually triggers that off.
Yeah.
So that's why it came about, really. Anyway, then we realised that actually perhaps there is something in this, and so then Martin then went forward, and we got various people to do the clinical trials with cats, with dogs. Phenomenal results with dogs. Yeah. And I've actually used it on my own dogs, when we've been travelling, actually, particularly travel was fantastic with them.
So what makes this natural? What makes it different to the other plugins you can buy?
Well, the other plugins you can buy will, work probably. They are synthetic pheromones.
Okay.
So that's the difference. It's this is, as I say, it's the valerian which actually calms the animal down. So valerian, which is a plant.
Okay. And other animals?
Works for all mammals and birds.
People? Would go spraying
well,
it
actually,
everybody?
funnily enough, I have used it on my teenage daughter when she was doing exams, and seemed to calm her down. It was fantastic. She was a lot nicer.
Yeah. Okay.
Comes in a plug-in.
Right, and obviously
and
like
then
this as
obviously
well.
in the spray. And because the spray is water-based, so pH neutral, so you can spray a little bit on your hands, under the chin or the chest of the animal. Great for spraying on a bandana and then popping around their neck.
Oh, that's a good
also,
idea. Right,
dog
okay.
trainers, if you're out walking and you foresee a little bit of a problem coming, spray a little bit on your trouser leg, bring the dog back to heel, and then they're taking in the actives that way. Works really well with that. It's fantastic.
And you're enjoying the weekend so far?
Having a great time. There's been some really fantastic speakers, really interesting stuff actually, and looking forward to today.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for chatting to us.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to put it out there, especially after this morning, we've just listened to 2 talks that could cause us some degree or some level of anxiety. And I just want you guys to know that there is the biggest nutrient in the world that just solves and goes a long way to influencing towards a way forward beyond that, so beyond any reactive behaviours we might see in our animals and beyond any well-being issues we might know or worry now that we're going to see. And that's love. Honestly, love is a nutrient. I fully believe that. I read recently a book by a Sunday Times best-selling author, Teresa Chung. Don't know if anyone's seen her book. She's got quite a few of them. And it actually had the answer to the $64,000 question, what is love? So she'd written this, what is love, as the chapter top. And I thought, ooh, interesting. Always up for another explanation. So, and it said, love is the desire to grow. So I let that sink in. And I thought, And I read a bit more. And you know, she's so spot on. Because when you have a desire to grow, you have an open mind. You've lost judgment. You're not looking for blame. You're looking to evolve and to grow. And that, for me, does epitomise what love is. And you guys are here today because you have that desire to grow. If there's anyone that isn't, put your hand up now. So you're here because you've got that desire to grow, because you love your dogs. But for me, our dogs are our biggest teachers. They're here to tell us that we are worthy of love too. And how many of you know that you're not listening? How many of you will, classic thing, it's even been printed on t-shirts now, my dog eats better than I do. How many of you fall foul to that? But your dog has come here to teach you about natural dog care, in showing you there what species appropriate nutrition is, and are you listening? Are you loving yourself? Yes, that lady is listening. Who else is listening? So good, because I do believe that dogs are, on a spiritual level, teaching us so much about ourselves and how to grow and develop ourselves and be healthier and happier individuals as well. So I never end up doing what I put on my presentation, by the way. Half time I don't know where my stuff comes from. So becoming more of who we truly are, that I think is about love and desire to grow, becoming more of who we truly are as beings. Because we are spiritual beings, ultimately. We happen to have a mind that lives in a body. Ultimately, we are spiritual beings. And so are our dogs, so are all the creatures on the planet. May have varying degrees of research been done onto their mental capacities, but all of them are spiritual beings that live in a body that happens to have a mind. So ultimately, they're all the energy, and we're all made of energy. But we say that all the time, don't we? We're made of energy. So hopefully throughout this talk gives you a better understanding of what that energy actually is, and also how I feel that that energy is a huge part of dog training that we're missing out. We talk a lot about the physical side of things with dog training. So it may come down to even things like exercise. Are they having enough exercise? Are they not having enough? What type of exercise for the breed? Are they being stimulated physically for their body shape? We talk about that a lot when we have behavior issues. We also talk a lot about the mental side of things. I mean, how many books have you seen? Think Dog. Inside the Dog's Mind. These kind of books are written, and very often I'll go into a bookstore and you look along and it's all to do with the mind. Whereas actually for me, the key with behaviour, presuming that works, is that dogs are feeling beings. They feel their way through life in the moment. They're not even thinking dog themselves. So by the time you've read all 10 books on thinking dogs, or, oh, it's flicking away. Don't tell them that yet. So I must have knocked it. So they're feeling beings. They're feeling their way through life. They act as they feel.
I mean, we do that too sometimes, don't we? So it may be that we think to us, oh, why didn't I think before I acted? Because we do it too. But they are truly that. And they're not even necessarily thinking about their feelings. They're just acting through how they feel in that moment. Dogs actually have the biggest heart per body mass of any animal, which again I find absolutely fascinating. So, biggest heart per body mass of any animal, so bigger than an elephant's per body mass. So isn't it interesting that they are the dogs that are in front of us? They're the animal that on a soul level is there in front of us, reflecting back to us, showing us spiritual lessons, showing us soul lessons, showing us even about, physical stuff like food. They're the ones that have infiltrated our lives and got there. And the heart is actually 5,000 times more magnetic in energy than the brain. This has been proven by a wonderful institution called the Institute of Heart Math, who do a lot of work on coherent states. So if you're, for instance, in an anxious state, the people around you will pick up on that on a heart-to-heart level. And they measure this. It's quite awesome, actually, that the things that they come up with and the studies that they show. And it really does come down to, if we can work on an individual basis on ourselves, we will have an impact. Sometimes it's common to think, it's not just me, everybody else has got to do it too. But actually, if we all think that, then nothing changes. So it is down to us on an individual basis. Now, another thing that makes me wonder, if see, it really wants to be on that slide, doesn't it? About the magnetic energy and the link that dogs have with magnetic energy and encouraging us to grow, is that they have a piece of magnetite in their ear. Now, this is apparently for no apparent reason, but it's in there. So on an energetic level, they are more able to sense what's happening with us than perhaps other creatures might be able to. Another study, which, and because being raw feeders in general in here, I'm sure we're all well used to talking about dog poo, is that dogs prefer to poo at a magnetic north-south axis. So they will actually look for this. So the study, if you want to Google it, it's Czech University of Life Sciences, The Frontiers in Zoology in 2013. So interesting to read. They will turn, the way they turn, that's what they're doing. They're looking for the right magnetic axis to actually go to the toilet in, which is absolutely phenomenal, really. So little things like this are happening, which are showing that they're relating to their magnetic energy and that they're emotional feeling beings predominantly. So let's get to the slide, which the universe seems to really want me to be on. So, okay, so consciousness isn't in the head. Oh, I swear I'm not touching this. I think I'm just... Consciousness isn't in the head, it's throughout all our physical form, and perhaps even in every cell. Train your dog heart to heart, create the dog you want. Now, taking that apart a bit, consciousness isn't in the head. So for so long, traditional science has seen that everything happens in the mind. But we now know that that is not true. If any of you have read the Candice Pert books, that explains about how the neuroreceptor points are all over the body, even on the immune cells. So it comes back to that feeling of calm and that feeling of love. It does influence the immunity. And at the moment, especially in countries that are very busy and full, like the UK, where the land and the pastures and the woods and the places that the dogs like to run in are being reduced, so they are going to have a higher level of stress. But I believe, whilst that may affect the immune system, there is things we can be doing, and there are things that we can be doing to recreate this coherence back for them so that they don't have to suffer as much. So it's throughout all our physical form, perhaps even in every cell. Train the dog heart to heart, create the dog you want. So this is really big for me. there's lots of books, Manifestation, Law of Attraction, some of you may or may not have heard about these, about creating our reality. And even to this day, I don't have the answer to the other $64,000 question, do we create our reality or is there fate? There's many books written on that subject, but I know that we have a huge influence over what happens to us energetically, and there are things that we do create. And for me, being able to be empowered enough to create what you want to see in your reality has got to start happening. It's really got to start happening, and hopefully throughout the talk I can explain how we can do that for our dogs, because all of us sitting in this room want the best for our dogs. And we know we need to be more empowered. For instance, when we go into our traditional veterinary surgery, how would it feel to be able to go in there with no fear and anxiety? You would then talk to that traditional vet in a completely different way. And actually, in my experience, when you go in a coherent state, you actually don't get the reflection back at you, this not wanting to listen to what you say, or not hearing you. You don't get that. You seem to be more receptive because you've gone in a coherent state. And it's such a subtle thing, but it does happen. Okay, so if there's light in the soul, there will be beauty in the person. If there is beauty in the person, there will be harmony in the house. If there is harmony in the house, there will be order in the nation. If there is order in the nation, there will be peace in the world. So I appreciate now, especially with everything that's going on, it's a big statement to make. But I think it's something we should be aiming for, definitely. So it's changing ourselves, and our dogs are definitely here to teach us how to change and how to be more emotional beings ourselves. So for me, natural dog care is about bringing your dog's body into alignment with its natural way of being. Okay, so bring your dog's body into alignment with its natural way of being to a natural emotional energy flow. So the emotional energy flow is what I want you all to take away from this talk, that this emotional energy flow, we can influence that. So rather than when we're just thinking about behaviour or training, to be thinking about the physical and the mental side of things, to really be looking at this emotional energy flow as well. Also about respecting nature. So learning from nature and being in alignment with nature itself. Okay. Oh, wow. Really flying ahead. I'm going to do my talk in like half the time. We're going to have loads of networking time. Okay, so nothing in nature lives for itself. I love this saying as well. Rivers don't drink their own water, trees don't eat their own fruit, the sun doesn't shine for itself, and a flower's fragrance is not for itself. Living for each other is the rule of nature. So for me, the reason why something like the biologically appropriate diet is most applicable is, oh, please stay on that one, please. Is because it fits in with nature's basic cycle. So for me, where should we start? Let's start on, so plants, for instance, here the plants are on planet Earth, grow strong and nutritious in the mineralized earth. So the herbivore will come along and eat those plants for nutrients. Anyone who has ever owned a tortoise or an animal like that knows how important the mineralized plants are for that animal. So the herbivore will come along and eat those. So the herbivore's stool will do two things. It will improve the bacterial load in the soil, but it will also plant seeds. And we're in this bit as well. Like the primates, like the gorilla, for instance, is predominantly herbivore. So herbivore grows strong and survives as well. And the carnivore eats the herbivore, as we all know our dogs do, or in Isla's case, wolves. So carnivores grow strong and survives. And then we come back to this. The carnivore's stool mineralizes the earth. So many of us see a stool change when we switch on to a biologically appropriate diet, or a nature's basic cycle diet, if you like. We see a stool change because it is mineralizing the earth, and that is so important to mineralize the earth. in order for the plants to grow. So this cycle continues to go round and round. And for a long time, I didn't know where humans fitted in with this. And then I went on a course by someone called Lauren Lockman, who runs a Costa Rican fasting retreat. And he says, in his opinion, of course, but that human beings originated from places where we would predominantly eat things with seeds in them. So bananas, for instance, when we eat a banana these days, there are no seeds. The tiny black flecks you see in some bananas, they would be seeds. But if you Google what a banana looks like, originally it's packed full of seeds. So where we lived in warmer climates and ate lots of things with seeds inside them, so again, you'd be avocado, pretty much any fruit that's got a seed in it, we would then obviously take part in this section as well, where as a primate, stools would plant seeds in the earth, improve the bacterial load. So we would be in that as well. And for me, if we're going to be talking about biologically appropriate food and we're going to want the best for ourselves as well, we need to be looking at whether we are eating a biologically appropriate diet. Now, there's a lady called Dr. Christina Warrener, who is the research professor, she's gone, research professor at Oklahoma University into anthropology. So for a very long time, she's looked at what our ancestors have eaten. Because one of the reasons that we talk about meat consumption in the way that we do is because we think of our original ancestors, don't we? And we think that's what we've always done, actually. And it's okay. But she can actually find no anatomical, physiological, or genetic adaptations to meat consumption in the human being historically. And she's been studying this for a very long time. Again, YouTube her. She's just brilliant. The video's absolutely brilliant. Now, what she looks at something called nitrogen isotopes to establish this. And what she's discovered is that if, due to the fact there was poor soil, for instance, one winter, or the plants weren't growing in a certain way, we as human beings would sometimes eat small amounts of meat. But what we're talking about is seasonal, for a start, and would only be within maybe, so I want to give it a time scale, but I can't remember hers exactly. So it would be something like a few times every 3 months, or it might be 1 month we did it every week because that's what we were eating, and then we would go back to foraging again. So our roots are not in meat eating. Whereas, obviously, carnivorous animals are. Okay, so they do have genetic adaptations, of course they do, to meat consumption. And so this, for me, is a big thing, because who might have an idea? Do you know how many animals, for instance, in the US are killed every day for meat consumption? Who might have an idea in the US how many are killed every day? Throw me a number. It's more than 2. No? Anyone want to have a guess? 3 million. It's 9 million. So you weren't far out. 9 million. And that's a figure, actually, from the Little Green Food Book in 2008. So 9 million in 2008 were being killed for meat consumption. And, you know, we talk about, wouldn't it be lovely if we could feed our dogs free-range organic meat without any hormones in it? But we're nicking all the stuff, and we're not even supposed to eat it. So it would be good for me. I don't eat it, and I think, okay, I would rather give my dog stuff that doesn't have the hormones in it. But it isn't out there for us to give our dogs because we're eating it all, and it's not even biologically appropriate. And they're in front of us talking to us and saying to us, learn from me, I'm here to teach you. So I'm not saying, don't go away thinking, oh God, that woman tried to convert me into a vegetarian. I'm not saying be a veggie, I'm saying think carefully about what you're eating and how much do you actually need of what you're eating as well. Of course, grain is another big thing. Grain is the big no-no, of course, with dogs at the moment, isn't it, in the natural dog world. But it's just as important for us to be avoiding it as well. So I don't know if if anyone tomorrow will be discussing grain, but for me, with the grain side of things, all of our bodies, every creature on the planet, has adaptations to dealing with lack. And one of those is to produce insulin. So we're not geared up as species on this planet to deal with too much of something. And what's happening with the grain is we're having far, far too much of that. So that's then causing issues, and probably with the meat as well. It's causing issues with us. So it's worth thinking that as well, that if that is a reflection in your household with your dog, it may be that you have to be looking at that as well. So every creature on the planet benefits from species-appropriate real food. So dogs, obviously, us too. Every slide of mine benefits from jumping, apparently, to the next one. So, consistent with their digestive system function. Yeah, I'm just going back again, yeah. So it keeps the cells of the whole digestive tract and gut lining healthy. This, in turn, keeps all their systems healthy. So it keeps the behavioural system healthy as well. 90% of serotonin, for instance, is created in the gut. So your dog's behaviour is more reliant, bearing in mind they're feeling beings, on what's happening in here than anywhere else, because its neurotransmitters are being primarily created in the gut system and in the gut lining. So if we want to make differences to behaviour, we definitely need to be including diet. And not just diet, but the health of the gut tract as well. They also have found that over 80% of communication in terms of neurotransmitters and feelings, they go up from the gut to the brain. So it can be a common thing for us to think of, communication happens here, and then it tells the rest of the body what to do, but actually it's the other way around. And this is the same with you guys as well. So emotional stuff you've got going on will be related to stuff in here as well. So also the immune system. Now, there are some stem cells that will be related to the bone marrow, and they will be created or survive or live in the bone marrow. But your immune system isn't separate. It's not a separate part of your dog. Your immune system is the gut system, the gut lining, really, more than anything. So they're not two separate things. They are totally and utterly interrelated, which is why, of course, that when you do feed a diet that is applicable to them and it suits your dog as an individual, you see the health changes as well, and their immunity grows as well. So that's another reason why we need to be thinking about our own immune systems as well. So this vaccine thing has to be a reflection back to us as well. The other thing about the immune system and vaccines that I've recently kind of worked out or discovered, if you like. When you have a vaccine, of course, the point of having that is that the body then has a memory. So it stores these memory B cells. And then, of course, if it comes across this, then it knows what to do to produce these antibodies. They live in the gut lining. They live there. So some come from the stem cells, but most of them are produce these memory B cells. Now, no one currently across the globe can prove how they store that information. So it's never been proven how they store that information. So for any one company to then say they only do it for a year or they only do it for 3 years, well, they're clearly lying, because no one knows how they do it, let alone how long they'll do it for. So yes, you can have certain studies on certain products in their range of vaccines, but you don't really know, because no one even knows. No one's cracked that code, except for, I hope now, a guy called Jim Alkalili. Has anyone heard of him? He's a quantum biologist, which I just find absolutely fascinating, because quantum biology pulls together the two things that I'm really fascinated with, nutrition and energy work. So it pulls this together, and he works at Surrey University, and I emailed him this theory. Perhaps the memory B cells are functioning and storing this code of an antibody in a quantum fashion. And he said, he replied to me. I was like, wow, I'm actually getting a reply from this guy. And he said, yes, I could be onto something, and he'd file it for future research and use. So you never know, they could be actually out there now having a look into that, because no one does know how that happens at the moment. Okay, so finally, of course, with the gut lining, something I just want to mention quickly as well, especially it goes back to what I was saying about grain as well, is that very easily what we can find that happens when the dog, or even ourselves, we're not eating a species-appropriate diet, we can get something called leaky gut. So this is where, because the bacterial load and the microbiological side of things within your gut system starts to become imbalanced, the gut lining doesn't renew itself. So it's almost like your skin renewing itself. You know, they say it does that every 4 days. Well, it happens internally as well, and this obviously happens with your dogs as well. So if, for any reason, the microbiome side of things is imbalanced, this doesn't renew itself inside, and that's where it can become permeable. Now, sometimes molecules of food can then get through that, and that's what creates a food intolerance to start with, but then can develop into an allergy if it's persistently kept going. So this explains why dogs can very often go onto a new type of kibble, for instance, and not react to it, but then a little while later, because they haven't healed that gut lining, they start to react that as well. And I don't know how many of you have seen that, but it does happen that people get on this cycle of choosing different foods. And very often what happens is we'll find a grain-free food, for instance, and because it won't influence this leaky gut, or if it gets through, there's no antibodies in that bloodstream, we feel that that's better at the time. But for me, healing that gut lining has got to be the way forward, because it will also influence the behaviour and the immune system as well. So for me, when we're thinking about diet, it's looking at the whole dog, looking at its history in terms of what the likelihood is of its imbalanced gut bacteria. And this is what a lot of holistic vets have got going on in the back of their mind when you go to see them. So they're not just looking at the presenting symptoms, they're looking at what else might have happened before. So just be aware, thinking back, if your dog's ever had antibiotics or you know of issues in the past, then it's worth thinking about what their gut lining might be like and how you could take means to improve that. So real food is packed with all the things your dog as a species evolved with. Okay, this for me is a key point that we consistently seem to miss out as well, because what we tend to do is determined to go over, isn't it? So I've found through research over 10 nutritional elements that are vitally important for dogs, really, well, any creature, to encourage cellular renewal, detoxing of toxins, balancing of nutrients, because the body does balance nutrients as well. It isn't all about getting it right in the bowl, and creating their own nutrients. There's a lot of nutrients that can be created. You know, B12 is actually a bacteria that can be created in the gut. For any of you that might have been worried earlier when I was trying to convert you to vegetarianism, it's actually created in the gut. So this is why we get deficient in it. People that eat meat can be seriously deficient in B12. So they can create their own nutrients. Now, I found 10 so far, I've kind of stopped looking a bit now, that are not in or compromised in processed food. So for me, it's not necessarily about saying the pros and cons of raw anymore. That kibble or dry dog food is not giving what a dog actually needs, and the guidelines behind what a dog actually needs are not comprehensive enough, in my opinion, at all. One of them is essential fatty acids. Now, we see this all over the news and the media, very often called omegas. Now, heat, light, and oxidization change these. They're a fundamental component of all life forms for physical, mental, and even spiritual energetic growth, health, and longevity of cells. They surround each cell to aid its flexibility. Now, a cell needs to stay flexible so it can let nutrients in and toxins out. So it's vitally important it stays flexible. You're going to know the answer to that question in a minute before it's even been asked. I have to jump on it quick. So they also create anti-inflammatory hormones, which are known as prostaglandins. Now, they're absolutely vital. What happens, of course, is your dog's body says there's been a wound or there's been an issue, and it creates inflammation. It's supposed to do that, but it's also supposed to have pathways to reduce that back down again. But what's happening is that they're not being created because the nutrients aren't there to create these pathways, these prostaglandins that go in as anti-inflammatories. They're the chosen energy source of a carnivore's metabolism as well. They support the function of neurotransmitter receptor sites. So when we talk about our 90% of serotonin being in here, they may be produced and not even being received because the receptor points aren't flexible enough, because they're not hydrated. We talk about hydration. Now, a lot of the word hydration comes from hydrogen. So it's not just about water. These essential fatty acids are predominantly hydrogen molecules as well. So it's a really important, for me, a really important nutrient. And there's a whole spectrum of them as well. But the ones they mainly talk about, the alpha-linolenic acid, is they tend to call it omega-3. That's the one that you'll see predominantly in adverts, which I'm sure you've all heard of. Now, how much do you think the pet food manufacturing guidelines state is needed by an adult dog? How much? Who can guess? Because you can all see it now. This absolutely amazed me. Because when I started as a consultant, oh dear, I'm all over the place now. Am I going backwards or forwards? That's it. I was obviously able to look at things a bit more and research things a bit deeper, and I thought there's got to be a reason for that. There's got to be. Anyway, so I thought there's got to be a reason for this. Now, some literature talks about something called esterases, which are enzymes that encourage the production of these. But apparently people have these too. And it's definitely deemed as an essential nutrient for a human being. Do you think it's that then? Okay. So for me to miss them out, oh dear. Sorry. That's okay. We're there. Yeah. So to miss them out, perhaps the computer needs some more of this essential fatty acid. This is obviously clearly way too inflamed. So after 18 months of age, they're not deemed essential. So prior to 18 months, because of the growth period, they're deemed essential. But for me to miss out on all those things by not feeding food that's got that in it, it's just absolutely crazy. So for me, it isn't about saying, you know, how can we prove that raw is safe? How can we prove that it's balanced? You know, the other stuff has not got even what is keeping them alive in it. And this, to me, is provable. I mean, Lint Bells do countless studies. How many studies must they do into their products and the benefits of adding essential fatty acids into their... Who, as our sponsors, has a product with essential fatty acids in? Everyone's pink. I'm sorry, I can't see beyond the pink. Honeys, of course. Packed. Oh, what about supplements? Yes, there you go. So, if you're worried about it at all, see these guys afterwards. Because you can add it to a diet, but for me, why do that? I totally agree with what Sue was saying. It isn't about supplementation. It's about getting it in there in the first place. And this is what, of course, happens. This is a really lovely dog, a rescue dog. Ooh, who in this photo had serious skin problems, but changed onto a raw diet and was getting enough essential fatty acids, and that was only 3 weeks. And this is the kind of thing that I'm sure many of you have seen happen with a switch onto a real food diet. So it doesn't seem to make any difference with this one. I think it's the laptop. It's not. It wants me to hurry up. And I'm not in the mood for rushing. So another nutritional element, which I think is really, really important and worth noting is, it's called the acid-alkali cellular pH balance. It's not something that necessarily we talk about a lot in nutrition. I do, obviously. Oh dear, this is jumping and jumping. So sorry about this, everyone. I don't want it to happen, so I don't know why it is. But so the acid-alkali cellular pH balance. Now, as human beings, this food is this lovely green stuff, one of my favourite restaurants to go to. That's what makes us alkaline. So what we're aiming for is an alkaline base. Now, for dogs, they will always be slightly more acid than us because they're carnivorous animals, and meat is naturally acidic. It forms acidic in the system, which is why we need to somehow get the alkali side of things in, which comes from predominantly minerals. So you'll do that with your bone content, but you will also do it with certain vegetables as well. So for me, there isn't a right or wrong about adding plant material. It's not about necessarily saying what's right or wrong in the bowl. It's about how can I get my dog as an individual to be as healthy as possible. And it may be that you just need to get them a bit more alkalized for a little while. When you feel that their health is better, you may not want to add those things again. So it's using things therapeutically to get the dog healthy rather than just always saying I must get the bowl right every single time, because they're all so different. So the Nobel Prize was actually won in 1931 by a guy called Dr. Otto Warburg, and he proved that cancer can't survive in an alkaline, oxygen-rich environment, but thrives in an acidic, low-oxygen environment. So by feeding ourselves and our dogs or other animals species-appropriate foods, we are protecting them. We definitely are protecting them, giving them their body the best chance of not getting something like cancer. And it amazes me that this is the kind of science that's out there and it's not being used. It's just there. You know, this guy did this, won the Nobel Prize for it, but do you get told this when you go to the doctors or the vets? No. So, oh, that's backwards, my fault that time. So the third one, I'm only going to talk about another one nutrient out of the 10, because otherwise we'll be here all afternoon. I want to tell you other really fab stuff about emotional energy. So third missing nutritional element for me, these are my top 3 really that I'm giving you. So minerals. Minerals are just, again, mega important for the body, help regulate responses to stress. So they relax muscles, they build the skeletal system, as I'm sure you know, teeth and nails. They rely on them to balance the water hydration in the body, so the kidney will be monitoring the levels of minerals in order to balance your hydration. And they also alkalize, which, as we know, is super important. Now, the thing is about minerals in dog foods, yes, some of them are asked to go in what they call a premix. So it will go in like a multivitamin, really, or more multi-mineral, that's put onto the dry food or onto the canned food, or into. What we predominantly find is they're synthetic. And if you go on to doctorsresearch.com, it is absolutely packed with references and tests and studies that show that non-organic matter, when they make these minerals from non-organic matter, they're synthetic, they are not as absorbable. So these multi-minerals that are being put into our foods, they've not got the absorbable form in. So yes, they've got it in there, and they've ticked the box, but it's not of any use to the dog. And for me, it always comes back to what can we do about the dog, not necessarily what's in the bowl. So that's another really key factor to think about when you're thinking about the different things. Because so many of us as well, or I hear lots of people I talk to, I put kibble on the top just in case he's missing out on anything. Well, it's way more likely that the food that's already in the bowl before you throw the kibble on top has got everything in it that they need. So moving back to physical, mental and emotional energy. For a long time, I still am interested in nutrition and the biology side of things. But even prior to that, I was already doing animal healing. I already knew that there was something in me that was more interested in the energy side of things than nutrition. And many of you know me from coming to my nutrition workshops, but I'm really going back to my roots now, and I want to be talking and teaching much more about emotional energy than the nutrition side of things. And also, when I started doing it, I mean, it was even only sort of 3 or 4 years ago, there wasn't the workshops out there that you've got now. You know, there are lots and lots of other people doing workshops and offering advice. So for me, this is the way forward now, to be talking about emotional energy. So I mentioned before about the 3 aspects of energy that we tend to think about when we're looking at dog behaviour. Now, emotion is literally an energy in motion, because we're all made of energy. So when you're feeling something, it's going to transform. It's not going to stay the same. So it's literally an energy that is constantly in motion, emotion. And dogs are feeling this as well. One way of thinking about it is to imagine almost like a tube, if you like, and the energy's flowing through nicely, and something might happen. So imagine that's like your dog's body, and it's like a conduit for this emotion that's going through it, this energy that's passing through it. All sorts of things might happen that could hinder that flow. And some things might get stuck. We see that very often. It gets labelled as cellular trauma or cellular memory in their body. And it might prevent the flow or restrict the flow in some way of their emotional energy. Now, very often, we can just simply through owning a dog and having them on a lead that maybe puts tension on the neck, that alone can restrict the emotional energy flow, which for me, explains why dogs are more reactive on leads than off leads, because their energy flow has been restricted, and they need to be able to keep grounding this energy and to allow that to flow through them, just as we do, but we tend to choose different behaviours. If we've got stuck or restricted energy, we don't tend to bite people, whereas a dog wouldn't, because it's not thinking so much on the moral side of things as we do. So we might punch instead or something. So we still use this centre of our body, our doing centre. We will still use this section. Now, the limbic system, the key to the limbic system, the strongest part is here. And this is the same on our dogs as well. So the limbic system is your dog's emotional system. It's the centre, really, of your dog's emotional energy. So, for instance, your dog is pleased and excited to see you. It has a rush of emotional energy. How many people see the dog having that rush of emotional energy, needing to ground? It goes and finds a toy, and it grounds on that energy, grounds on that toy. So it can ground and release that emotional energy and keep that flow going. They do it naturally. We've probably got lots of behaviours as well that we do, which are emotionally led like that, ways of grounding. But it's really interesting to start looking at dogs and seeing the different behaviours that they do to start grounding their energy. So, as electromagnetic beings, bearing in mind the heart is 5,000 times stronger than the mind, the biggest influence over how we feel, and this will go with your dogs as well, is actually the sun. I took that photo when we were flying back on the way here, left that sun behind. So the solar activity and human activity levels are really linked, and it's so fascinating. This guy, I've written his name down, Alexander Javesky, apologies if I've said it wrong. He's a professor of astronomy, and during the First World War, so it would have been 1914 to 18, he decided to map all the different peak points of battles. So when an energy becomes stuck or restricted in some way, whether that's global coherence over the whole planet or whether that's one individual person, it can only but force itself out. Okay, and create a dramatic behaviour in the end. So what he looked at was the different levels of whenever there was a battle, what was happening with the sun. And he found that, can you see those? They look quite pale from here. Can everybody see the lines? They completely paralleled. So whenever there was a solar flare, so when this planet was sent lots of electromagnetic energy, and we went, whoa, I don't know what to do with all this, can't ground quick enough, got cellular trauma here, got this here, don't know what to do with myself. We went into fight or flight and created these battles. So it completely linked with what the sun was doing, which I find absolutely fascinating. Another guy called Sootbert et al. Produced some work in 1997, which showed not necessarily always about the fight or flight, but about creativity, and actually proved that the scientific and the art breakthroughs that we've had over the last few centuries have also come at the same time as these solar flares. And the one thing we know about emotions as well is that they are linked with our creativity. So when you get those aha moments, you're normally in the flow. How many people hear about writer's block? They're clearly not in the flow when they're having writer's block. But then when they start to write, it's like it just comes from somewhere. So they're allowing this flow of energy that could be in their cells somewhere to come out of them. So that I find fascinating, because here we all are trying to train our dogs, and actually the sun's got it all. The sun's got it all. We're not really in control at all. But there is a website you can go on. I actually completely forgotten the name of it, but I meant to look and didn't get time, what with organising this as well as talking, as to whether there's a sun's peak at the moment, because there could well be with what's happening, or what we know we're being told in the media is happening at the moment in Syria. Could well be a sun peak at the moment. Be interesting for somebody to Google that and find that out. Did somebody say there was? That's the website for the sun spots. The website was NOAA, did you say? Okay. Gives you an idea. Don't go and plan your life by it entirely. But it is interesting to look, actually. Would be quite interesting to collect some data and see whether our dogs in households had emotional energy they needed to ground on days that we could see on this website was showing us that the solar flares were there. Okay, so ways to assist emotional energy flow. Okay, so you might think, I want to de-stress my dog. I want to give my dog coping mechanisms. I want them to be able to cope better with stuff that happens to them. All these ways to assist are just going to go by the looks of things. So Sue talked a lot about stress and being an influential factor to well-being, which is completely right. And no, we can't avoid experiences and things that happen to us, but we can encourage the dog to be in a state that it copes better when these things happen. It doesn't store or restrict its emotions, it allows them to flow. So we can encourage that. Diet and nutrition choices, we've talked about quite a lot already. So an increase in the dog's awareness of its physical body is so important. So when they have a traumatic experience happen to them, or they have a stressful incident happen, it can be quite minor or it can be quite high. It depends, really. They store it somewhere. So it gets stored as what's called a cellular memory. And when a dog is more aware of its body, it is able to access those a lot better. So the Tellington T-Touch is a great method. I did some training in that, qualified about 8 years ago in that, and that is a method as well that can give you ways to start to release cellular memory and build body awareness. I also do that through canine hypnotherapy, which is a new technique. I say new, to me it's maybe I've been looking into doing it for maybe 5-6 years, but it's new in terms of what I've got it down to now. So it's a very safe way of going through that dog's body and allowing them to become aware of their body and actually release cellular memory or cellular trauma that's within that body and allow themselves to flow again. So one dog that I went to see, Poppy, And there's a video of her on my website. She actually was barking at the postman. That was why I'd been asked to go and see her. And did the canine hypnotherapy on her. She went under absolutely fine. And went through her body. And when you start talking about certain body parts, you can almost see it. You can see them moving and see them stretching and see it releasing this cellular trauma. Now, it took at least 3 hypnotherapy sessions to release what was happening in terms of the postman, but the next day, the lady phoned up and said, I can groom her everywhere now. She's really not concerned about me grooming her, whereas before, you couldn't really get sort of further than halfway down her back. So that was a really interesting, for me, showing me that this was really happening, and that once I could start releasing this trauma. So this must be happening on an energetic soul level. There is no other explanation for what happens when you do canine hypnotherapy. I started doing training courses on this now. At least 8 of my 10 students are in this room, I'm sure. I don't know where you are now because you're all just pink. So you just can't see very much. I can see the people here. But so this is something that I want to get out there because I think it's so important that we have different ways of chilling our dogs out. Definitely. Because we're real doers in dog training. We be hardly ever. We're real doers, and we're like the next action we need to take with our dog, the next thing we need to do with our dog. The dog is doing a behaviour we don't want it to do. We must have to do something to change that. But actually, it's the being that makes the biggest difference. And it correlates through the whole of our lives, to be honest, all the different things that we're doing. We need to be way more and do way less. And that's where the changes come in. Things like mindfulness and meditation are obviously becoming a bit more widely known about the benefits of these. And one of the things that my students will be able to do when they've qualified with me is run something called a relaxed dog training class. Now, for me, these are just so needed and long overdue. I would like to see in every town a class where people can go to and they can be more with their dog. They can understand their dog's body on a more proprioceptive level, on a more balanced level, and literally be more with their dog, rather than all the time it's the expectation on the dog must do this, you must do this. And this, again, for me, is a massive lesson that dogs are bringing for us now, that we need to be more and do less. Does that make sense to everybody? Is there anyone who's thinking, I'm not sure, I'd rather do more? So increase the dog's awareness of its physical body. Some of the ways that we can actually do that, different harnesses, definitely, or leading arrangements might come into it. Things like the canine hypnotherapy that I was discussing as well. Even massage treatments as well. Anything really that builds a proprioceptive awareness to what's going on will start to help that. Behaviours centred around the nose and the face area, such as sniffing and chewing. Really, really key to getting your dog to ground emotional energy and thus be less reactive and in the moment be much happier and less likely to do these behaviours. So as I was discussing, this is the limbic area. This is our emotional limbic area. Same with the dogs. So sniffing and chewing, fabulous. I mean, they're behaviours that dogs like to do as well. Someone at the door. So it's a great doorbell as well, isn't it, as well? It's brilliant. So sniffing or chewing, one of the things that often comes up if you learn about scent work is that how mentally stimulated it's making the dog. For me, what it's doing is it's getting them to release emotional energy. Some of it may have been stuck for years. It's no wonder they act calmer afterwards. So for me, it's not a mental thing. This is an emotional thing that's happening to the dog when it's using this area of the body in the way that nature designed it to use it as well. So go to scent work classes. I would always advocate that. When I run my retreats, we do scent work activities because A, they're fun, but also they are getting the dog to release emotional energy and to keep that flow of energy going. So the other way as well, transform your own emotional energies. This is really big for me as well, and we're going to do something called the balance procedure in a little while, time dependent, where we'll be able to sense and feel our own emotional energies, because the dogs pick up on our own emotional energies. I mean, we know this really, don't we? They know how we feel, they know when we're upset, they know when we're a bit happy. You know, they sense this all the time, and they're picking up all the time. So also reducing experiences that cause resistance to the flow. So just, for me, this is thinking ahead. You know, can I reduce stressful experiences that my dog might have to have? Can I make sure as well that, for instance, that I'm not using a lead and a choke chain? You know, am I using some? I mean, even it makes you wonder about the face harnesses, whether they're then restricting emotional flow. Yes, they do make the dog dampen down, but is that because it's really restricting them so much? So these are all things to think about. I don't always have the answers, but for me, understanding that behaviour and how they act is centred around how they feel because of their emotional flow is really important. So one of the ways there's a picture of me, it's jumping and jumping, working with a dog to help with its emotional flow. And there's a picture of us doing some scent work on the retreats that I run. Just fun stuff, really. And here is a picture of meditating with our dogs. Let's go back to that one. So the landscape photo is a meditation class. So this is the relaxed dog class, part of a relaxed dog class that I did. And the portrait one is an example of this method practitioners use called the balance procedure. And this is a dog that was very, very connected, and probably is still very connected with his owner. But what was interesting, when this owner balanced, when she released her emotional energy, the dog was yawning. So it was almost yawning with it. So for me, the dogs are almost a reflection. They are a reflection of our emotional energy, and we become a unit with them. So they are there to assist us to release emotional stuff that we've got going on. So we're going to do some balance procedure in a moment. And there's a nice picture. I don't do the, I used to do a dolphin boat watch trip as part of my dog retreats for dogs and owners, but we don't do that anymore. And that's a lovely dog called Honey, who was just, that picture just epitomises being in the flow, really. And also with the waves as well. Waves and the sea are quite a good way of explaining emotions as well, because they are constantly moving. So you can see how you feel and how the dog feels as a complete transient thing. And yes, sometimes you will get big, big waves, but other times you won't. And for me, to say that a dog is labelled as a certain way, where it just isn't the case, because they're constantly moving, their emotions are constantly changing. And for us to be able to recognise when they need emotions to be grounded and give them opportunities to do that, it's all I do now, and yet the dog's behaviour has changed. I don't do any command-based stuff anymore. It's all to do with energy, and the behaviours change over and over again. You know, it just doesn't seem to be the need for outside other ways of working. I mean, it's my thing, so, but it's obviously wonderful to be able to teach other people some of it as well. And if, just as a quick poll, actually, who would go to a relaxed dog class with their dog? Who thinks their dog could do with being a bit more relaxed? Yeah, quite a lot of people. I think the one thing, lots of people by the sounds of things, the one thing that everybody wants in their dog is for it to be calm and happy. And it's the one thing we're not doing. Or we're not taking that opportunity to be with them. There may be someone here who meditates with their dog. Who meditates with their dog? Yay, this lovely person. And yes, good for you, yeah. We need to be doing this more and more. One lady came on my retreat with she was on one of the previous slides actually, a white schnauzer. And apparently this white schnauzer, because you know what dogs are like for routine, so he would go and sit on the meditation cushion if she was late for any reason or something happened and she hadn't got there. So he really knew, he wanted that time to really connect with her. And if you're looking as well to empower yourselves, get connected so that you can really, really intuitively know what's going on with your dog, you need to be a lot more. Just be yourself. It is so phenomenal what actually happens when you do this and when you stop the outside influences. And stuff will go through your mind, of course it will, because as human beings we have these minds, but the rest of your cells are at that time allowed to be. And you will find that you become more empowered when you go to see your vet and you want to discuss the fact you're raw feeding. You don't feel that level of anxiety. You know, I mean, I know some people that will pull up at the vets and they're already feeling anxious about the fact they've got to tell them that they raw feed, let alone when they're actually in there telling them. You know, there are animals. I would just get yourself empowered so that you don't feel these things when you go in. Really calmly, yeah, it's just what I do. This is what I do. Yeah, lots of other people do it too. Did you not know there was now a veterinary organisation for raw feeding vets? You know, that kind of thing. So we need to go in a coherent state. And the only way we're going to get in that coherent state really is to start being more than we're doing. Ooh, might need to be drinking water in a minute. So there's a picture of a logo which I hope you're going to see a lot more of, relaxed dog classes. Yeah, it'd be amazing. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the balance procedure. Oh, back here. In fact, now might be a good time to talk about... I think it's just going to go through my slides, isn't it? It's going to give you my whole presentation again now. But that's okay, I should just let it do it. Maybe some of you forgot some of it. I tend to think these things happen for a reason. I hope. How are we doing for time? That's cool. Okay, for the balance procedure, I'll get you to stand up in a minute. Now this is in some therapies known as the assemblage point. Other places call it the vortex point. This, for me, is our energetic center. So this really is the dog's, okay? Because we're upright, this is more ours. Now, when we are feeling shocked, where do we put our hands? Where do we put those is right on this assemblage point. If we're laughing too much, if we want to sedate our energy systems, we put them here. And I don't think also that it should be missed that also when we're meditating or we're in prayer, that kind of thing, we tend to use this area. Now, it's not the heart. It's not the heart chakra. It's a point that's between the heart chakra and the throat chakra. So it's kind of around here. And again, the Institute of Heart Math have got lots of documentation showing the coherent energy that comes from here. This is the point as well that all our meridian lines begin and end. So they will come from here, energetically travel down, back up to the head, go back down, come back up here. And then the next one starts again. So it does the same journey. So all our meridians, so our whole energetic energy system is coming from this part of us. So who's up for doing balancing? If you don't want to stand and do it, don't do it. But if you do, then please do. I'm not going to have time to teach you the whole balance procedure because that takes a whole day. I do day workshops on this sometimes too. So what I want you to do is just stand for now, and with one hand, it can be the hand that's strongest with you. If it's a hand you write with, for instance, you can put that. And I just want you to think about the dog that brought you here today. Whether it's a dog you currently own, a dog that you used to own, a dog you've lost. Just think about that dog and just see what your body wants to do. Do any of you feel a pull forward or a pull backwards? Yeah, but you're all feeling something. Is anybody not moving at all? Because sometimes we can be so out of touch with our emotional flow, because don't forget this is happening in the heart, 5,000 times stronger than the brain. So when we're creating stuff, we're not creating consciously. We can use this point to anchor our intention to create consciously, but the stuff we create predominantly comes from our heart, so we're not even thought about it before it's out there. And if there's stuff out there we don't want to see, it's not because we created that with our mind, we wanted that to happen, it's because we've got emotional stuff going on that isn't flowing. So, did anybody not move? I'll try and look in the sea of pink. Only a few. Okay, so when we do the procedure, we shall see whether you do then. So, if you put your other hand over, okay, and what I want you to do is breathe in for the count of 9. Okay, have a pause at the end of that breath, and then release back down for 9, and say the word balance out loud. Take down one hand, so you've only got the original hand there. Give your shoulders a little bit of a wiggle, and just see where you go now, and if that's any different. And you nearly fell forward, yeah. Some people do. Oh, back. Okay, so you need to. If I was working with you, we would reverse that to get your emotions flowing forward, because you want to be creating the future. You don't want to be stuck in the past. So, so we would work with that. But that's really just to give you a taster of feeling what your body-mind can do, because it is very, very powerful, and by default, it is creating stuff. Okay, so if there's stuff in your reality that's going on, you think, I don't really want that to be in there, then it's happening because of your emotional energies. So it's about grounding those emotional energies, getting them to flow again. And it just makes such a massive, massive difference. Thank you for standing. So